I would love to hear from Aljo, right? I'd really love to hear from Sterling right now because there's very few ways in this sport to control your own career. Oh, and by the way, control your own career just means you have a say. It just means that you help to influence your own career. It's one of those things, and the only way you can do it is to speak up, and we haven't heard from him. Use Dana by example. When Dana goes to a press conference, it's rinse and repeat every Saturday night, which is immediately what happens with this fighter. What do we do with this fighter? And Dana has say the same thing, which is, let's see what happens. We'll see what happens. He can't commit. He can't make an answer. But the reason for that, he hasn't spoke to them yet. There could be an injury within a fight that he's yet to hear about. By example, one example. But let's see what happens. I can't give you a commitment. I can't give you a date. Oh, yeah, we're going to do that. We'll see you all in 4 weeks at T-Mobile Arena. He can't do that. Talk to the commission. See what everybody says. Is there a suspension in place? Is there something that we've yet to see? It's one of those things where the absolute best answer and the only answer is the one that Dana gives, which is, we will see what happens. So, very few times, few and far between, has he broke that rule. Few and far between have you had a night like, say, example, Moreno-Figueiredo. Awesome fight. Point taken away from Figueiredo. Ends in a draw. Conclusion to be continued. And Dana can go to the press conference and go, we're going to make that fight. And even when he did it there, Dana said, to quote him, he goes, we're going to make that as quickly as we can. But that's the best answer he could give. To come back to the points that I made, which is he's got to talk to everybody. He's got to hear if there was an illness, if there was an injury, if there's a delay with the paperwork and the commission. It's one of those things that as soon as we can is the absolute best answer that he can give. And it's the one that he gave. But I bring that to you because another night that he did it would be Ngannou's last fight. Ngannou's last fight, first round knockout, devastating, scary, which is not a word that you use a whole bunch, right? If you got the stomach for cage fighting, you don't have the word scary a lot. Ngannou was scary. And this was on the heels of John Jones moving into the division, and it was a precursor still to Stipe and Cormier going out and figuring out who the champion was ever going to be. And Dana said, no matter what happens, Francis is the number one contender. We will put him on ice and we will weight him, and his next fight will be for the belt. When that is and who that's against is to be determined. But it was one of these nights at a press conference where it was hard and fast, and that's the way it was, and that's the way it's going to be in a couple of weeks now. Same thing happened when they asked Dana about Jan Sterling. Yes, absolutely going to rematch them. Now, the reason I bring that to you is it sounds as though perhaps it's too late to let anybody weigh in. On the very few and far between times when Dana has made a decision as quick as a press conference, that's exactly what happens. So we may be a dog chasing the tail here, but I would like to hear from Aljo. He is the sitting champion. Who do you want to defend against? Do you want to defend right away against Jan? Do you have your own opinion? Right, if you had won this belt in a different way than disqualification, you want it by knockout, submission, or decision. There's 4 ways to win a fight. Knockout, submission, decision, disqualification. It's the only 4 ways. Had you won it one of the other 3, which certainly you envisioned, you would have had a microphone, you would have done an interview. Was there somebody you were going to call out? Did you have a direction that you were planning to go, unarmed with the information that you now have, that he needs you while you were down and you're going to rematch? I would just be curious. I just mean Chael Sonnen, a fan and watching from the outside, I would be curious what Aljo's plan was going to be. But I'm not against hearing what his plan currently is. Ray Longo, Sterling's longtime coach, cornerman for the fight, came out and was doing an interview and he said, man, I've never seen hate like this. Talking about himself, I am getting threats. I am getting negative messages. So imagine what Sterling's getting. The guy just won a world title, his lifelong dream of dedication and sacrifice. Won it the last way you'd want to, right? You got 4 ways to win it. And they kind of go in order of knockout, submission, decision, disqualification. He won it the last way you want to win it, but he won it one of the 4 ways that you can't win it. And now not only is he getting bad info, it's now gone over to his coach. Ray Longo was talking about himself. He's saying, Coach Longo, am getting the threats and negative and put down, and you got to rematch the guy. And it's one of these things where I would be very compelled from my evil side. If the fans try to do that to me, I would stick it right back in their ass. I would remind them, you don't tell me what to do. I will tell you when I'm going to do something, and you will put down $50, and then you will watch me, or you won't. I would remind them. This is how Chael Sonnen would have done it. The fan was never going to tell me what to do. I am not in grade school, and I'm going to be bullied to walk outside at 3 o'clock at recess. I'm not going to be peer pressured to drink a beer on Saturday night. I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and you're not going to influence. And it sounds as though Aljo is happy to be influenced by this. That doesn't make it wrong. I am sharing with you, I am personalizing this, would like to hear from him. I would like to know what his plan was ahead of time when he laid at bed at night and envisioned that belt being wrapped around his waist and his hand raised in victory, and Bruce Buffer saying his name. And I can assure you that's exactly what he envisioned, and that's what every fighter ever envisions. You go through the mental process of it. You picture the warm-up. You picture your walkout. You picture your name being announced. You picture the referee getting out of the way and saying go. There's part of the visualization process that every athlete does, including that moment. Hand raised in victory. In Aljo's case, chance for a championship wrapped around his waist. And then what are you going to say afterwards? Was he just going to thank his mom? I would still like to know. Was he going to be the ultra boring guy and give all glory and praise to God? One of these was like, oh, Jiminy Christmas, could you please, as a God-fearing Catholic, say anything else but that? Was he going to do that? I would be curious. I'd like to know what he was going to do. He certainly wasn't planning to take the belt off, throw it down and discuss, sit down, and I would like to know what the plan was. Oh, and by the way, I would like to know why we're not still on the course of the plan. I would ask him that. And if he gives me an answer because he is being peer pressured into doing something and he is being insulted and his coach Ray Longo is being insulted on social media, I would probably push back and go, Aldo, that's not a great reason to go do something. That's called peer pressure. That's called bullying. You as the champion of the world, come hook or crook, should be above being peer pressured into something, and you should definitely not be eligible for bullying. Right? It's one of those things where I would like to have this conversation, and ultimately, whether we like it or not, and whatever his opinion is, that doesn't mean you don't fight Jan. I mean, in this sport and life in general, and you can all relate, there's a lot of times you go to your job. There's a reason they call it a job. It's something that you wouldn't be doing in your spare time. The stuff you choose to do in your spare time is called a hobby. So I don't think that hearing from Sterling, and I don't think that hearing his opinion detours you from what he is prepared to go out and do. I'm just offering you another side of this. Which is, if a fan or anybody else in the dark of night and through a medium called social media is trying to get you to do something, which by the way, looked like he was going to do anyway. They're trying to say that you're scared to do something, which is just a baffling comment because you just got done doing it. I mean, remember when people did this to John Jones? Remember when they did this to John Jones about Reyes? You're scared to fight Reyes. But he had just fought Reyes? It was a very weird thing. You're going to tell John Jones he's scared to fight a guy that he just got done fighting? Like, this is just weird. Right? You're grasping. You're clearly grasping. And your message isn't, hey, John, you're scared. Your message, if you could speak clearly and had the guts to do it, would just be, hey, John, you want to know what I'd like to see? I'd really like to see you fight Reyes. And moreover, I'd like to see you fight it because I think Reyes can beat you. And I want to see somebody beat you. That's the real message. Nobody really thought that John Jones was scared to go do something that he had just did under the unified rules at the 205 pounds against the that he just did. They just thought that Reyes could beat him, and they were haters and wanted to see him get beat. That was the real message. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You just thought there was something wrong with that, so you presented it in a different way. But you're now trying to goat Sterling into doing something that, one, he just did, two, he is most likely do, and three, the ultimate decision maker said he's going to go do. So you're going to get your way. That rematch is going to happen. That rematch is going to happen contrary, in all fairness, to your humble host right here. I've been following mixed martial arts since 1993. I'm pretty good at this. I've done no level of research, which means I have not gone to the internet. I trust a disqualification has happened somewhere over time. I don't remember it. I go from the UFC to Strikeforce. I go to WEC, Pride, Elite XC. If you remember that, there's something called One Champion. I mean, I've watched them all. The Rumble at the Roseland, I've watched all of them. I do believe that I've seen a disqualification. I am very honestly and sincerely telling you, I don't remember what it was. I can't remember who got disqualified. It's a sport that's very hard to get disqualified in because there's very few rules in the sport. It's very hard to break one of the rules. You have a guy who, I'm only bringing to you, I don't love the idea that there's a built-in rematch as a reward to a guy who broke a rule, but we all decided at the same time. We all collectively as the jury decided, and this represents millions of people, millions of fans across the world, all collectively decided at the exact same time that it wasn't on purpose, that the punishment and the losing of the title was too extreme, and we decided how we were going to remedy it. Judge, jury, and executioner unanimously worldwide decided without review that it was on accident, the punishment was too extreme, and by the way, the remedy was going to be a rematch. And I was more interested in that piece of psychology than I am anything else. And I know what you guys are thinking, Chael. You're the skunk at the garden party, and you're the lone person talking about Jan cheated and so on and so forth. I hear it all. And I'm not as crazy as you might think that I come to the same conclusion as the rest of the jury, which is that it was an accident. It was an illegal accident. A guy couldn't continue, and the bylaws say the match is stopped. The person that was fouled is the victor. In this case, there was a title up, which also means that he's champion. I do ultimately come to that same conclusion. I'm backing up and saying it was amazing to watch the whole world at the same time in the snap of the fingers decide that cute young Peter had done this unintentionally and that the punishment were too extreme. Oh, and by the way, we're now finding out the victim, Sterling, is the culprit and the bad guy. Like, that's a very amazing conclusion to come to, no matter how much time is removed. It is a fascinating conclusion that the entire world, I have heard nobody else speak out and say he cheated. It is going to be rewarded for it, and that's weird. I've heard nobody say it. Collectively, worldwide, like that, we all decided, and somehow with a little time removed have even made the victim in Sterling the culprit. That is fascinating. I have now set the table. I've left the elephant in the room out of it. See if you're smart enough. You bring the elephant in the room to me. You be the one to say it so that I know that you're following along.